Hey everybody, welcome. My name's Hannah Benedict.
And I am Jessi Segander.
And today we are talking about, this week we've been talking about bigger kids and their really big emotions. And so we were just, talking about like what's some more things and really thinking about like what are the developmental, like what's normal big displays of emotion in older kids, and what are maybe some things to be looking for that say like, hey, maybe we need a little bit more help than what we're getting.
I think it's so important for us as parents to realize our kids are going to have big emotions, and that's a normal and healthy thing. And I think there's definitely some developmental things, when we look at kind of those tween years as they're starting to go into puberty, there's going to be big emotions, and that's okay. Their body is changing, their brain is changing. And so kind of just setting that, like when I see my kids have really big emotions, reminding me, and oftentimes reminding them, like, hey, it's okay. Like this is hard, or that must feel really overwhelming, or just kind of setting out the, like, it's normal to have some of these big reactions, even if we weren't living in a pandemic, even if the world wasn't the way that it was right now. There's a lot going on when you are getting older, and just kind of normalizing some of those feelings.
Well, and recognizing too that when like we're 3, 2, 3, 4, that those big emotions often look like falling down on the ground, kicking, screaming, crying, like they're very physically expressed. And I think that at one point, parenting, I had a child, when my kids had hit like elementary school and something, and they're like yelling and screaming and like calling names and like doing all of these things that I was like, this is so out of character for you. What is going on? And realized that it was a very similar to what I would call a tantrum in a preschooler age child. And now this is what it looked like in my older. They have more language. So now all of a sudden, they're screaming, you idiot. And I'm like, where did you ever hear that from? That's not something that happens in our house. And it's coming from that same place of, I'm having all of these emotions and these feelings, and I don't know what to do with them. But I've got a lot more verbal capabilities here. And I have been told over and over and over again, don't hit, don't punch, use your words. I'm using my words, and I'm going to hurt with my words.
Right. And we have had the same thing, but also on a physical level of like, they're bigger. And like when that, they've kind of flipped their lid and those big emotions come tumbling out, oftentimes it's in a really physical, aggressive way. And we're constantly having that conversation in our house of, hey, you're bigger, you don't realize how much you can hurt other people. What is this going to look like? And I think also realizing that some of those big emotions, like they can come out verbally, they can come out physically, but they can also, those big emotions can cause some of our older kids to completely shut down and completely freeze. And so sometimes you may think like, what, my kid's not displaying a lot of big emotion, but they're living in their bedroom, they're not coming out, they're kind of disconnecting from the world, and they don't want to engage with anything. That's often some sort of big emotion, but it's just caused them to kind of go into that freeze mode, connection mode, rather than it coming out in a different way.
Yeah. I think it's really when kids are feeling these really big, whether it's that extreme or that withdrawing, sometimes just giving that language, not necessarily having to address what we could deem as misbehavior, but that like, hey, you are feeling really, really like disappointed that this happened, or you're feeling, I imagine that must feel really like scary, or whatever that is. Oftentimes we'll diffuse that. Going back later on and addressing like, hey, like but do that when the rational brain has come back on, not when when we've got big emotions and stuff. But sometimes just calling it out, like, whoa, you are feeling out of control. Like you wanted somebody to do whatever that, you wanted, and now you can't make that happen. And that feels really out of control. A lot of times all they need to hear is, and they'll be like, yes.
Yeah. And I think it's so wise. We just had a situation in our household where there was lots of big emotions from everybody. And realizing that one of my kiddos just needed some time and space, like some solid time, like not 5 minutes, but some time and space. And so just saying like, hey, before we are done with this conversation, like I just said, like, are you going to be able to follow this conversation in a half an hour, or do you need a couple hours? And they're like, I can't have this conversation until this afternoon. Okay. And then just letting the situation be like, we're not going to resolve it right now, but we are going to come back to it when we're a bit calmer, but also giving them that choice, that moment of like, hey, we're going to deal with this as a family. We're going to have this conversation. You can decide if it's now or later. And of course, their answer is, I don't want to. And I'm like, that's fine. I know you don't want to, but we are going to. So is it now, or do you need a little bit more time? And then again, like just a lot of the, I think that validation of like, this is really overwhelming. And it's interesting to me what, sometimes it seems super random as to what causes the big emotions. I've got one kiddo that stores up all their emotions, all of them. And then it's the slightest thing, and they just come erupting out. And then I've got another one that just flies off the handle often with big emotions. And so also like, at least for us, like trying to understand the differences in my kids, and then also in how they communicate with each other, because right now a lot of their big emotions are aimed at each other. And so realizing, like, one kid will say, I didn't do very much. I'm like, yeah, but over time things build up. And so trying to even give them that understanding of like, everybody's big emotions look different. They come out of us in different ways. And how do we take care of each other and give each other space as we're handling that?
Yeah. Something that you said, like at the very beginning there, was, offering them the ability to choose maybe when they come back. And oftentimes big emotions come from a lack of feeling power or control in a situation. So like it may be sadness, or it may be anger, it may be frustration, or it may be annoyance, but usually that comes someplace. There's usually some sort of control or power need that's kind of at its core. And when we give back a sense of control within certain boundaries, so like the conversation will happen, but allowing them that sense of control over when it will happen really can help to diffuse that in a way, because now all of a sudden there's that I'm starting to get a handle, a grip on feeling like I have some control within how this is going to go in the future. And I think that's really important to consider too.
Yeah. I think also just realizing that as our kids grow older, like the goal of them growing older really is to be exposed to lots of different people, lots of situations. Like they're coming out on their own. They're kind of detaching a little bit from mom and dad, and all of those things are really good things, and all of those things can be really hard things. And so even as we're put into new situations, which we know our kids need to have, or they're looking forward to a situation, I think that's gonna be so fun. And then they get there and they find that they have really big emotions around a situation or after a situation. That's really normal, and it's really healthy, and it's just part of that, like, hey, I would be anxious too if I was starting a new school, or if I was doing something for the first time, or whatever that is. Just kind of helping them understand, like, all of this is really normal. Let's give you the tools to kind of help regulate some of those emotions.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we are excited to announce that we are launching our new course, Big Emotions, What to Do for the Whole Family. This month, we are going to give you more information about it, but we really want to provide you with an understanding of what's happening in your kiddos, no matter their age and their big emotions, what's happening in you with your own big emotions, and really practical tools to address those things in your family. So head over to our website, actionparenting.org, and learn more about our upcoming course, and have a great week.
Yeah. See you later.